Welcome, friends. Welcome to enLIGHTen, where we talk about creative consecration through Christ. So happy to see you on here today. We study the scriptures through art. We are letting more light in. And I am so excited to have you here. We're going to talk about Jesus and scriptures and so many wonderful things today. And I am very, very excited to be with you today. And it's Wednesday, it's the middle of the week, it's our recharge. I love that we can we're halfway through Sunday, so we get to have a spiritual regroup and recharge as we gather in the name of the Lord today. So super excited to share some thoughts and ideas. And as you know, we are starting the month of exercising faith. This is what we're going to be pondering this whole month of June. Hopefully you receive my email, my newsletter, okay? I never know when I hit send. Sometimes it just goes there in space. But hopefully you received this. Good morning to Lisa, Georgette, hi Robin. I saw Peggy on here. Anyway, so fun to see you, my friends. And so many great things to talk about that I just can't wait. And a little update on Sky, because I've had people send me DMs and wanting to know how it went with her teacher in her class, that she was having a hard time and she had to, my daughter Sky, who's at BYU, and she had to watch a horror movie. So I'm just gonna give you that update real quick. She actually she did a quiz in the beginning, which was great. She got 100%. She was glad she was there for that. And the teacher started showing the horror movies kind of towards the end. It's a 3-hour class. And so there's a pause in between. There's a break. And she noticed that more than half of the class was not there, by the way. So for those of us that were praying for the class, they'll be okay. And she's like, oh my gosh, her friend, the other cute girl that did not like horror movies, she wasn't there either. So anyway, she just left after halftime. So she got her attendance, she did her quiz, and she did not watch any of the other horror movie clips that were shown. So win-win. All right, well, let's dive in. Honestly, I am so excited. We have I've tried to chunk it into 4 different sub-themes in the idea of exercising faith with 4 different pieces of art. And today we're going to be talking about obedience and how do we exercise faith by being obedient, and why do we even do this, right? And so I am really, really excited. It's a piece that we haven't really talked about much, and it happens because whoever comes on enLIGHTen, they pick the art. This is kind of an unknown one, and I will try to describe it as we are diving in, because I know people listen to the podcast or watch it later as well. But for those listening, I'm going to sort of try to describe what is happening. So in the art, so as you're walking and listening to enLIGHTen, you can have the visual as well. So I chose this piece because its name, of course, it's abounding through boundaries. And so you could see there's so much symbolism here. In this piece, we have a woman in the middle of a frame, in the middle of a field. It's a wide open field with beautiful sky, and she is just walking through that field. And there's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of stuff happening outside of the frame where she is framed. There's more light. And there is a falcon on her arm that is standing right here. And so there's a lot of symbolism here that I'm going to touch about each one of those pieces. And what it really means is I wanted something, because I just sometimes have a hard time when someone says, do this. I'm like, why? It's just, I kind of want to know why. And I love to choose for myself. I don't want to be forced. into making choices. And so I really wanted to show, like, create an art piece to remind me that how important it is to choose to have God's commandments, because we're trusting him. And so, and we're in the middle of the world. You could see that it's definitely, we are right in the middle of the world. And yet, because you could see the mountain continues inside the frame right here, that it did not stop. She's not part of the world. She is in the world. We are in the world, but there's so much more light when God's law is present, when God's commandments are present. And I chose a gold frame around her, and this idea that it's royalty and holiness, right? That there's so much in that way that we are able to have that eternal value shown of who we really are. So I chose the gold frame around that is a protection. And we're going to dive in and talk as well in the scriptures about that concept that I love so much. And I was thinking, what kind of bird I felt I want to have a bird in there, because if you actually look, it maybe feels like there's confinement here in a sense. If you first look, and it's kind of how commandments are sometimes. You first look at the commandments and you're like, oh wait, this is restrictive, right? This is actually not letting you move. And yet it's the exact opposite. It gives you so much more freedom as we learn what that actually means. And so that is why I put the falcon. I prayed about it. I was like, what bird do I keep in there? And we have so many falcons. Where we live, they're extremely good in their vision, which I thought it was so symbolic. They can see so far ahead than we can with our limited earthly vision, which is symbolic because that's what the commandments of God are. His law is, he sees the big picture. They are a protection for us and given to us to be watched over, to govern us, to help us and protect us. And so I'm like, I'm gonna do a falcon, because that bird, when it hovers, when it flies, it sees like for miles. Its vision is so sharp, so precise, so bold and confident, knowing where to go, noticing the little mice or chickens in my backyard example. Like, he loves to take our chickens, which is kind of sad, but I guess he has babies to feed. So I put the falcon idea on here because I wanted to show the importance of seeing and thinking about God in this as we abide to his law and commandments, because he knows the big picture. And by being obedient to his law, we actually can fly and have so much more freedom, because we know that sin is bondage. Sin can, breaking those commandments, sin can pull us down and pin us down, that we cannot fly. We would be in bondage. And so that was also the idea. Of course, it's the red color is very much a symbolic of the atonement of Jesus Christ, which is the ultimate freedom and what makes it all possible for us to feel alive, to have his law written in our hearts, not on the stone tablets, in our hearts. This is what Jesus taught us. He is so much about teaching us and wanting us to obey because of love. In fact, I love Fifth Sunday so much, and I can't wait for July because I love America and I'm a huge patriot. And I love that we talked about America. I love that we talk about the Constitution, and I want like 10 more weeks of that, or even every week a little bit more of that. But it was so amazing. And I loved how we talked about moral agency and how important it is for us to choose to obey God's laws. In fact, when I came to America, I was like shocked of how much people love to keep the law. Like, because it's their law, they love the law. And I mean, people would be stopping at a red light when they could have just gone. Like they would, if there's like a pedestrian crossing, they would, if there's a sidewalk, they would wait for that pedestrian to cross. And I was so impressed. Where in Bulgaria, like I grew up in Sofia, in the big city too. And they're like, oh, come on, get out of the road. You know, what are you doing? What are you doing crossing the road? Just very different attitude towards laws. And that was like my very first impression as I stepped foot on American soil. The love that people had for the law and keeping the law. Anyway, that was just a sidetrack here. But I think this is so amazing. And someone is asking, which book is this? Yes, every time I use these pieces, they're from my Awake book. My husband and I put this together. So, and it's all basically, there's some of his beautiful poems in here. And these are all the Instagram posts with art. So you wanted this to come to fruition. So thank you, because you were the inspiration of actually putting this book together. So anyway, and yes, this is so fun to ponder. And you could see someone actually said on here, which I loved so much. Let me go back. Someone said the frame is her protection from the growing dark of the world. Yes, that is so true. And someone actually said on here as well, the frame makes it seem like she's enveloped by the light of Christ. And I absolutely love that so much, because truly this is what keeping the commandments looks like. Because we are in the world, there's all this craziness going on, but we have the commandments. And as we strive to keep God's law and his commandments, there's more light in our lives. And this is really what I was trying to portray here. I was really trying to show how you could, and I'm so glad you noticed this, cute friend, that you commented that, is both you and Liz talking about how it protects us from the darkness and also allows us to feel more light into our lives as we strive to abide in the law that God has given us. And that was the ideal. I intentionally, you could see there's definitely more light into her surroundings within the frame. There's more light above in the clouds, and because there's more clarity, there's more ability to see farther ahead in your life. This is kind of an interesting side note as well. My son London was attending University of New Hampshire, and he was playing soccer there, and one of the boys, and of course he doesn't drink alcohol, right? And which made him very much stand out, and people were like questioning him, why do you not drink? Because they would get drunk after all the time. Anytime there was an occasion, they would just get drunk. And it was such a blessing because he had this cute friend also on the team, Aaron. What a gift he was to London. And he did not drink. He was not religious at all. He just said, I don't drink because I can't think. I don't want to be in a position where I would be drinking and then I don't even know where I am. And I don't know what I'm doing. I wouldn't be aware. I would not have clarity of mind. So that was his drive. And I was just thinking that's what the commandments do. They help you have more clarity in your mind and in your heart. And that little example of abstaining from alcohol, keeping the law of the word of wisdom, keeping that commandment can free you and enlighten your mind and help you to think for yourself and to know where you are. And so you don't fall into that bondage in that sense of darkness. And that's what sin does. Truly, sin brings us into bondage. So I wanted so much to portray that idea that as we strive to keep God's commandments, there's more light bestowed to us and in the choices we make and in everything we say and do. And I am just so grateful for that. And as a convert of the church, I have learned to grow that in that knowledge and that understanding, and I still am. And that's why it's so beautiful that we just keep learning and we keep growing. We keep listening to the prophet and the apostles and our leaders, what the counsel is, and read in the scriptures and those stories and learn. And we're going to go to 2 stories today, which I'm really excited. And I am so grateful to go into the scriptures and see what did that look like to be faithful and show obedience by being faithful in the scriptures as well. And that's a great comment. Liz is saying, each commandment is a choice we make to have a stronger relationship with God. Oh my gosh, I love that. Like literally saying to God, I trust you, right? Like, can we think of a commandment that way? Can we just think, instead of saying, oh, I have to do this, can we be thinking, I get to do this because I trust my God and because I want to have his love more abundantly in me and his light and his strength in my life. And so I love how you said this. I want to be in a stronger relationship with God. So what a beautiful way to describe that. If we can think of a commandment that way, as I can show God that he matters so much to me, that I want to show him that I do trust him, and I strive to do that in my daily life and activities and whatever I'm doing. So I love that. That was so beautiful. And Susan is saying, commandments, a love note from God. Oh, so true, right? It is. It really is. It's just a reminder. And isn't it so great? I mean, think of like some of the revolutions that happened in the world, and they would taken somebody down, and yet there was anarchy after that. There was no order. There was no new order. There was nothing instituted in the place of it. And that's why I love America so much, and I can't wait. We'll talk in July a lot more. But I've been listening to this book that I adore. It's called The 7 Miracles That Saved America. And it's so good. And one of them is the Constitution. And they did break free from England, and they, with God's divine help, created a constitution. So they had the law, the governing law of the people, we the people in the land. So it's just so incredible that how essential and how important truly it is to have laws and to abide those laws, because like we choose God. They are his laws. They are for our protection. They are to help us to become more like him as well, right? And truly they give us more freedom. I believe that by keeping the laws that God has given us, we receive more freedom, more of his light in our lives. And so thus we have so much light in this art piece here, and the falcon that sees beyond, symbolic that as we see and trust God, he sees the big picture. He has the greatest vision for our lives and in each one of our stories, and how much more wonderful it is to walk through life with him by our side, with Jesus Christ, the greatest light in this world, and truly walk through life with that knowledge and the importance of those commandments in our lives. I was thinking, there's this scripture. It's mentioned, I could think of two times. It's probably mentioned more times. But I was thinking the New Testament, and it's the moment where Jesus, it's the talents, the parable of the talents and the pounds, okay? And so the Lord of the vineyard, which is all symbolic, says that, well done at the end, well done, thy good and faithful servant. And I know also in the Book of Mormon, when we start in the very beginning, Nephi, faithful, Lehi, faithful, that word also keeps coming up throughout the Book of Mormon. Incredibly well described. And I just love that. He didn't say, well done, thou good and wise servant, right? Well done, thou good and rich, or prosperous, or there's so many other ways it could have been said. And yet it was faithful. That is the word that is chosen to be welcomed by God symbolically. Like, you've done your work on the earth and you are faithful. This is what you're commanded, that you did well. And faith is like the believing, and the faithful part is like you keep going. You're loyal. You don't give up. You keep trying. It's this consistency that you just keep striving, and you keep wanting, and you keep choosing God. And I love that. I love that idea that it's really, that is what they used to say that. And I love that that's what it says. And okay, I think this is a beautiful comment as well. I'm going to put the art up because Beth is saying, I think the art represents how we think our lives are centered around what is inside the inside picture. So this is the inside of the frame. But we really are surrounded by so much more, one of which is the light. Yes, that is actually so true, because so often we don't even notice how we are protected by that light, right? And how many blessings come into our lives because we are striving to keep the commandments, and we don't necessarily even notice if we're not looking for it. If our eyes are open and we continually seek that, we probably would be able to notice more. But thank you. That is a good good point. And yes, and so faithful, it's so true. Great comment. Faithful is what's important to God, not the things of the world. And I just love that we can strive to be faithful. We can strive to abide by God's law, by his principles, by everything that he has given us. And I looked up the word faith in Hebrew. It's emunah, and it means to act in firmness according to God's will. Okay, let's repeat that. So it, like the Hebrew word emunah, means to act in firmness according to God's will. I mean, right there, we're talking God's will, his law, his love shown through that law for us. I think there's a lot of beauty. So it's truly doing something about it with that faith, is being able to keep those laws and to strive, right? To feel him in our hearts and in our lives, to actually do something about it, which I love that so very much. Let's go into, we're going to go to, I think 3 different places today because they're all so good. First, let's go into Joshua, because I've been thinking a lot about him since we just studied him last week. And this week, I teach Sunday school, gospel doctrine in our class, in our ward. And so I'm going to bring some of the stories I've been pondering and thinking about our Come Follow Me study today, which I'm really excited because they're right along what we're talking about. And I'm very, very excited that we get to ponder these truths today. So we're going to be in Joshua chapter 1, and we are going to go in verse 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's kind of a lot, but they're so good. And so I love them so very much. And, this is a great comment. So let's just, before I jump into that story, I just wanted to read these. Anna, cute Anna, is saying, love what you said about the word faithful. Reminds me of keeping covenants and how God will never give up on his covenant children. Amen. This is Hesed, right? Cute Anna, I am so glad you said that. In fact, I am just so glad that I remember after one enLIGHTen, you texted me, it's like, it was so good to be on enLIGHTen and the things we talked about, and it inspired me to go to the temple. I literally had goosebumps. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, because that is just such a joy to hear that just by talking and sharing these truths and talking about covenants and God's law and love and the temple, and I'm so grateful you shared that with me, and it just made my day, and I had goosebumps. It was like, wow, God is so great. He is so powerful, and he loves us so much. And so I just love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Truly, it is so important. And this leads into what I want to share right now about Joshua in such a beautiful way. Cute Anna. And I love what Julie is saying. I was thinking those laws, they crest our foundation. Wow, how firm create, I think that's what you meant. Yes. Okay. Those laws create our foundation. Wow, how firm a foundation that we can continue to build our character and relationship with Christ. Oh, I love that. I think singing that song now, I'm going to think about God's laws, how firm a foundation. That is so beautiful, because truly it is the doctrine of Christ, that it is the roots, it is the foundation. And as missionaries, that's what we teach. We teach so much about the doctrine of Christ and how important it is to understand that. And so his laws and having faith and acting in obedience, most crucial part, is just so beautiful. Thank you. That was so great. Oh, Vicky, that is so cute. Okay. All right, guys, I promise we're going to get to Joshua, but I have to say something about this, because Vicky said that the frame reminds me of a fence providing protection found in keeping God's commandments. And so, yes, I really wanted to think about that, like, and also maybe also like a river that has banks, and the river can run wild and be concentrated and focused so much more beautifully and bountifully if it has the banks on the side. You know, very same symbol. Then if it would just like spill all around, it would not have the same strength and power. So I love that you mentioned these beautiful symbols there. So, okay, let's jump into the, so Melissa is saying, God will equates to providing a way to accomplish such or a pathway that proceeds before us. Often we cannot perceive. That is so true. And thus we trust him. We rely on him as him being omnipotent and omniscient and all powerful and knowing everything in our lives, right? So that is such a beautiful reminder. Okay, so we're going to be in Joshua. And this is so amazing, because last week I pondered, and the week before, just this whole idea of courage. Still, I just love it. I have Joshua 1:9 on our granite, like in our kitchen, like on our table there, like it's sitting. It's just a little thing that says Joshua 1:9. It's a quote of Joshua 1:9, and be strong and courageous. And I just think it's so important, because it's really a theme in Joshua. And I know Peggy and I, who is also in here, we talked about Cinderella, that one part when her mom tells her, be strong and courageous. I love that movie because it makes me think of Joshua and that story. And now this is so interesting, because this is what I found as I was reading these scriptures and I was thinking about be strong and courageous. I was thinking about Joshua. And so we are in Joshua 1 verse, I think we're going to start in 6 actually, 6, 7, and 8. So we're going to do this. I'm just going to read this quick because it's so beautiful. And again, verse 6, this is what Joshua is counseled. It says, be strong and of a good courage. For unto this people thou shalt divide for inheritance this land, which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Verse 7, notice this again. Only be thou strong and very courageous. Joshua was one of the most brave, most courageous. He literally, his whole life from the very, very, very beginning was courage. And so it's interesting that God is counseling him to be courageous, like as a soldier. If you think about it, like he's like, he was in the front lines. He was fighting. He was the one in the very back when Moses asked them to start the army. because on the very back they were attacked. Some of the Israelites were attacked on the very end. So he was the one. He's like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna protect them. So he, from the very beginning, he's been like Moses's right hand man with a sword, ready to fight, ready to defend, ready to protect God's people. And so it's interesting. I kept thinking like, be strong. He is super strong and he's super courageous because he's proven that throughout his entire life. And he's in an older age right now. And yet this is what God is telling him. And then I had this thought, and this, because this is so beautiful. He's saying, be strong and of a good courage. Verse 7. And only be strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law. So courageous all of a sudden is like, be faithful in keeping the law. That is what courageous has just meant here to Moses and to all of us. I think this is so beautiful. So he's like, okay, be strong, very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. So it's like, don't look to the world, don't look sideways, trust God and his laws. And listen to verse 8. This is amazing. Being courageous. He's telling him this book of the law, in this reference, he was talking about the Torah. And for us, it is God's commandments, right? God's laws shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe according to all that is written therein, that then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. So it just made me think, be strong and courageous. It's like, be faithful in keeping your covenants continually. Strive for that consistency. It is so interesting. And I love this comment Liz is saying in Hebrew, courage implies a spiritual readiness to face the struggles of mortality. So, it is so beautiful. And it's what we're seeing this, right? So when we decide to keep a commandment, when we decide to be honest in a situation, when we decide to pay tithing, when we decide to go to the temple and think of those beautiful covenants, we are being strong and courageous. And we know what happens. I mean, we're going to jump into Judges here in just a second. And the Canaanites, that land, there was a lot of stuff going on around. And just like there's a lot of stuff going on in our lives in this crazy world, and yet that's what we are meant to do. We are to be keeping those covenants, to be faithful to our God. And that is what will keep us, that will help us to prosper, and it will preserve us and protect us, and we will find success. That is what Joshua was promised. And same it is with us, that we will find that. And I just love the idea of tying faithfulness to being courageous, to understand that, and having that spiritual understanding that as we abide and strive to keep God's law, we are being strong and courageous, and we are allowing him in our lives. And so let's go. We're going to study two people today. And I am just so in awe of these two examples and how actually different they are in so many ways, and how much we can learn from each one of them in our own lives. So we're going to go into Samson. Let's jump into Samson's story, because it's such a good example of what does it mean, the power of consistency. I think that is really what it's teaching us, and how essential it is in our lives. So I know when I, like the story of Samson, sometimes when I speak to the youth, I'm like, what do you know about Samson? You know, it's like, well, he had long hair. That was his strength. And Delilah cut it. She took his strength away. And that was it. You know, he lost. There's even a song written, right, about Delilah cutting his hair. But anyway, I just think there's so much more in that story. So let's dive into Samson's story. And we are going to be in Judges. Judges 13 through 17 really is Samson's story. And it's a wonderful read to kind of backtrack what is going on. Is that really true? Was the strength in his hair? Was that really it? And we're going to find out right now. So we learn that his mom promised him, right, that he was going to be a Nazarite. I hope I'm saying that right. And so there were vows. There were 3 vows that they would vow. They would say, these are things that we're going to keep because I'm consecrating, I'm giving my life to God. And these are my 3 big commandments, vows that I will be abiding to. So his mom, we learned that in verse 7. So we're in Judges 13, verse 7. It says, behold, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, which would become Samson. And, and now this is her counsel that she receives. This is even in the womb. Samson's in the womb. Thou shalt not drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat any unclean thing. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. So did you catch this? There's 2 things that we are taught that is part of the vow. She is starting them already from the womb. So the one we're told, no drinking of wine. So that is the first vow. And the second one, that thou shalt not eat any unclean thing. So that was also the vow that Samson had. And the long hair, that the strength was in the long hair that we learn about at the very end, is the physical appearance of that strength, if we could say that, right? Let's jump into Judges 14, and we're going to be in verse 8. So throughout the life of Samson, we hear that, and the Spirit of the Lord came continually, mightily upon him, and gives him this amazing strength. So he is so well known for his strength beyond anyone. He is physically undefeated. And that was a gift from God. And so something happens in verse 8 that is so interesting at verse 8, and then we're going to read verse 17 about those vows that they were part of his life. And this is so interesting. In verse 8, we learn, and it says, and after a time he returned to take her. By the way, he marries a Philistine woman, even though his parents were very much so against that. That was a boo-boo. That was not expected of someone in the covenant to do. So that also, he insists of that. So he's on his way back to get his wife right now. And this is what's happening. He actually, prior to coming back to get her, he fought this lion with his bare hands, we're told. And he defeats the lion. And incredible strength again. And now what's going to happen in verse 8? Listen, this is so amazing. And it says, and after a time, he returned to take her, his new wife. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. This is that same lion that he killed with his own hands. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took thereof in his hands and went on eating and came to his father and mother. And he gave them that they did eat, and he told them not that he had eaten the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So we're seeing here right now, he had just the vow, the big vow of thou shalt not eat of unclean thing is broken. He had just eaten that honey, which was in the carcass of the lion. And so jumping into verse 17, he actually has this 1 week long feast for his wedding with his new wife, which in the Hebrew word is a mishteh, and it's a feast of drinking, to drink. That was a big part of that feast, was for them to drink a week long, drinking wine. And he is in verse 17, it says, and we learn here, his wife, it says, and she wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. So now we're just learning that again, he has broken another one of those vows. And the very last one that we're very aware of is the cutting of the hair, where we are seeing symbolic of that strength being cut away from him. And it is kind of interesting to, in verse, actually, if you go to verse 16, verse 20, it's so sad. It says, then he, Samson, wist not that the Lord was departed from him. So he didn't really know that the Lord has departed from him until the very end. Because, I mean, it kept working. He kept having that strength. But not until finally his hair was cut did he not realize. So it's interesting to see him. He's an Israelite. He grew up. He was one of the judges. And yet opening the door, like, for these not consistent with the vow that he has made choices. And those were choices he made in private too. Like, he went to the lion, he ate. Like, they weren't necessarily that public, especially that one. But it's interesting to see his character as, on the outside, he looked just perfect, strong, always powerful, just mighty man, right? And yet, all these choices he was making that were not consistent with God's law were very, very difficult, because he kept continually forgetting his God, little by little, not paying attention to them, justifying them. And then at the end, not actually the end, but in that point of his life, we see that the power of God has left him. And not till the end, because this is our merciful God. And I love that after he gets taken into prison, and in prison they take his eyes out, and we could think that is the end, but it's not the end, because we're told that his hair kept growing while he was in prison. I just love that mercy of the Lord, that he saw his repentant heart. I'm sure it was he's like, what in the world? He realized, what has happened to his life, and turned to God. And we are told that his hair started to grow. And then he asks the Lord, this is so beautiful, in verse 28, Judges 16. And Samson called out to the Lord, because usually his strength just kept coming to him, right? He didn't have to ask God, well, give me that strength so I can defeat these Philistines. He was just so strong and powerful. He did ask for strength to drink water at one point because he was so thirsty, and God gave him the water. But this is the first time that Samson is actually asking for strength, because he knows he has lost it. And yet his hair is growing, and he's talking to God. He's turning to God again. It's this merciful justice and mercy coming together. So absolutely beautiful. And I just love that. And he's saying, and Samson called to the Lord and said, "O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee, only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes." But so the Lord strengthens him. We know the story, and he dies as well, but destroys most of the Philistines in that moment. But anyway, amazing seeing what faithfulness can look like, and how, if we ignore the little important parts of the covenant and God's law, how we can lose his spirit. And unless we repent, unless we turn to him and ask for forgiveness, his spirit will not strive for us. And I love this. This is such a important message. And yes, Susan, he lost the spirit, and the guidance is so true. And I love that God's like, well, turn to me, because I will fill you with your heart and soul. And okay, Ruth, can we just talk about, in fact, I was pondering these two. I'm going to write about them. I think my post on, for this Sabbath, for Saturday, I post on Saturday evenings, but I think that is going to be those two character stories that can teach us so much in our lives. We have Ruth, who is so much the opposite. He was not an Israelite. She was a Moabite. She was a foreigner. And she had lost everything. And it's interesting because there was so much heartache. She has lost her husband, her father-in-law. And it's those people's God that they're following. And yet mortality, all these hard things are happening in their lives. And despite all that, she chooses God. She chooses him. I mean, she tells Naomi, thy people will be my people, and thy God will be my God. And how different that is, because she was like a nobody, right? She goes, she doesn't know anyone or anything. She's keeping the law there. She's gleaning when she meets Boaz. She is keeping the law there. She's just going and picking up whatever is left there. She is being very obedient to that one God she decides to follow. It is not comfortable. It is not easy. In fact, Naomi told her, go back to your land, go back to your gods, right? And she doesn't. She wants to continue to follow Naomi's God and her God now, because she has been converted to the God of Israel, to the one God of Israel. And she's decided very firmly, steadfastly minded. That is what she was, to follow her God. Even in this very dire situation when it is just ground zero. But going back to your comments, the foundation, that firm foundation, it's our God that he can build up for ground zero. He can build in our stories when it seems impossible. That there could be growth in that land. It seems impossible that there could be a happy marriage coming out. It seems impossible there could be children coming. It is so much death and desolation in that moment, and so much devastation and heartache. And yet Ruth is faithful. She is not giving up. In fact, she is steadfastly minded to keep going, to be faithful, to keep those covenants, to keep going. And it is just such a beautiful, beautiful example of that perseverance, even when things seem impossible. That perseverance and exercising faith by being obedient to God. And it is such an amazing example for us to strive, to keep seeking that light and holding on to those covenants and to our God in our lives. Okay, I can't believe we have 10 minutes left. This is crazy. Time goes so fast, and I love all of your comments. Ruth's love of God, of her late husband, of Naomi. Yes, you guys, so many wonderful thoughts on here. Love that so much. I love this book so much. It is by Elder Holland. You know, each Sunday, each Sabbath day, on Saturday, or sometimes when I forget, very early on Sunday morning, we have a family group chat, and we study one of the names of Jesus that during the sacrament we can take upon us as the sacrament prayer is read. It's just a little tradition. We like to ponder that, and then we would get together and talk about it when time allows. But I love this book, and I love pondering Elder Holland. Just adore him, love him so much. And one of the names that he talks about in here is the law, about Jesus being the law. And this is so beautiful. John 14, it is so beautiful. And 35:15, 4-5. I hope we have time to read both of those. If not, please read them after, because they're so beautiful. But no, I'm going to touch on them because I love them so much. So quoting Elder Holland, this is so beautiful. He is talking about the law, Jesus Christ being the law. And I literally had goosebumps just reading his words because they touched my heart so much. He said the two great governing principles for citizens in the kingdom of God are love and law. Jesus combined those, succinctly, briefly, right? Succinctly, when he said, if ye love me, keep my commandments. John 14, verse 15. We know that admonition of Jesus. And then he said, I am the law, he declared to the Nephites. 35:15-9. That is literally what Jesus says. Like he himself says, I am that law. So when we look at a commandment, when we look at something we're asked to do, we're looking at Jesus because he's saying that I am the law. This is from me. Oh, it's so beautiful. And he says, and as such is the perfect lawgiver. This is who Jesus is. He is the perfect lawgiver, giving commandments whose only purpose is to increase. This is so beautiful. This is what Elder Holland is teaching us, why we have those commandments. Why do we have the law? Why do we have these guidelines? Why? He is answering our question. He is saying the only purpose is to increase our opportunity for happiness and enhance our ability to love. This is so much what Jesus is. And that's why he's giving us, this is why an apostle of the Lord is testifying of what the commandments are to us. And this is what he's teaching us. It is so beautiful. It's not from a talk, it is just from this cute book that, I'm sure maybe it is also in one of his talks, but it's The Names of Jesus. And I read this and it just touched my heart and soul so much. John 14 talks about that, like over and over again, and 15 as well, talking about that Jesus saying, I am the law. My words, and he says, keep my words. This is so beautiful. When he says, keep my words, like keep my commandments, both. He uses both. I looked up the Greek word for what does it mean to keep the commandments? Keep the commandments. So let me just quote you the Greek for that, because I thought it was so beautiful and so tender. To keep in Greek means to treasure something, to protect it because of its value. That is the keep the commandments part here that we are taught. So like carry them with you, protect them. Their value is so tremendous in your lives. Holding on to God's power and his love. So the commandments are giving us capacity to love more. This is so incredible what Elder Holland is teaching us. And in 35:15, verse 9, Jesus says, behold, I am the law and the light. This is so incredible. Like the joy that we have that comes from keeping those commandments, treasuring them, holding on to his words because they are him, and treasuring his law because that is him. That will make our capacity to love greater. It would increase that capacity. That is what Elder Holland is teaching us. And I am just blown away by the truthfulness and the joy and the freedom truly that comes from realizing that it's Jesus we're holding, his commandments, and let us treasure them and share them in that light, because it can change situations and circumstances and our stories and our relationships with others, with us and God, if we view his laws and his words in that way. That is a direct way to increase our capacity to love and to build our relationship, going back to like truly building up our relationship with him. So many wonderful things to ponder and think and just bask in that light and treasure these, truly the words of God. It is so amazing. And it is so wonderful. Oh, I love this. He cleanses us in order to adopt the law. That's true. Like you want to be clean. Like you strive to have that and that's what his law helps us to do. And becoming more sanctified and having his spirit to dwell with us so we can we be witnesses for his name. This is what we're asked to do. And what do we promise in the sacramental prayer? That as we do so, his spirit will fill us. This is our loving God. It is always for our good. It is so his mercy and his justice and his love and law, it will fill us. His spirit will testify that and will fill us and will give us strength to go on through our lives. And I just testify of his light and truth that comes as we strive to consistently be faithful and keep his words. Don't let him depart out of our mouth, like Joshua, right? Like we treasure them, we keep them because their value is so wonderful that we can feel more of his love and connecting obedience to his love that is eternal, everlasting, the Hesed for his covenant people. It is so wonderful. And I love this, Lisa. You're saying this week my word to ponder will be lawgiver. It is so absolutely wonderful to do this. And Melissa is saying to be a light in the darkness, to create choice in the darkness, right? To choose God because he will dispel the darkness, because light is exactly that. It illuminates and dispels the darkness in our lives. So, and Vicky, this is so cute. Vicky saying, ultimately, his commandments provide us with protection and freedom. Yes, amen. Thank you, everyone. What great thoughts. And for those of you listening later, please share this with someone that you think may benefit from hearing these words. If they meant to you, share them. Maybe write a comment, like where the podcast is. It gets more people to see that it's worth their time to listen to our conversation and our comments and our discussion about Jesus. So maybe take some time and do that. It would help so much to just spread the word and tell others about Jesus, because that's what we're doing. We are talking about God and we're sharing his message so that more people will feel his light and more people will have freedom in their hearts, because that is what his commandments do in our lives. And love you all so very much. I cannot wait to keep pondering these beautiful thoughts on what does it mean to exercise faith. And I heard it when I was in the temple, that same phrasing, exercising faith, over and over again. I heard it 3 times. Maybe it's in there more than that. But I was like, God was trying to tell me something. He was trying to teach me and say, you need to study that more. You need to ponder that more. So I love your insights and your beautiful light and everything you shared on here. And hopefully we have been enlightened and we can take some of that light and act upon it in our lives. So love you so much. Carpe diem. Seize the day. And we will be back next Wednesday. We're going to be talking about faith. Again, next Wednesday, we're talking about faith in small things, sowing, and the idea of mountain moving. So that's going to be, next week is the path. I have my little schedule here. Faith through the fog. That's next week. Love you all. Mwah. I will see you next week. Have the most beautiful, blessed, light-filled day. And may God watch over you. Yes, light overpowers the darkness. Amen. So beautiful. Love you all. See you next Wednesday. Ciao, ciao.